The silverware gleamed under the chandelier's soft glow. I had polished each fork and knife that morning, the way I always did before Richard's family arrived. But no amount of polish could prepare me for the words that would cut through the air that night. My name is Patricia, and I'm 67 years old. I spent 42 years as a registered nurse at Mercy General Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. I wiped fevered brows, held trembling hands through diagnoses, and learned that healing sometimes means knowing when to let go. That Thanksgiving evening in 2024, I would learn that lesson all over again, but this time, about my own life. I met Richard 4 years earlier at a grief support group. We were both widowed, both lost, both wondering if it was too late to feel whole again. His wife Margaret had died of cancer in 2018. My husband Tom had a heart attack while mowing the lawn in 2019. We understood each other's silences, the way memories could ambush you in the cereal aisle or during a commercial for dish soap. When Richard proposed on a beach in Virginia Beach in the summer of 2020, I said yes without hesitation. At 63, I thought I'd found my second chance. What I didn't know was that his daughter Melissa had already decided who I was before we'd even met. The house purchase in June of 2021 should have been our fresh start. I had saved carefully throughout my nursing career $180,000 in retirement accounts, money I'd planned to use for travel or maybe a little condo by the coast. Instead, I put it all down as the down payment on the beautiful colonial in Chester, Virginia. Richard contributed $120,000 from the sale of his previous home. We bought it together, our names both on the deed. A real partnership, I thought. Richard's daughter Melissa was 38, a real estate agent who drove a white Mercedes and wore designer suits that probably cost more than my monthly pension. She had her mother's blonde hair and her father's blue eyes, but something harder around the edges. She'd call Richard every Sunday, but never when I was around. She'd visit, but always when I was at my book club or volunteering at the hospital. The few times we were together, she'd smile, but it was the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. The kind I'd seen on family members who resented the nurses keeping their elderly relatives alive. I told myself I was imagining things, that she needed time, that blending families at our age was complicated. Richard assured me she'd come around. "She's just protective," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "She'll see how happy you make me." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. The warning signs were subtle at first. A picture frame turned face down when I walked into Richard's study. Margaret's cookbook that I'd asked to borrow, suddenly misplaced. The way Melissa's voice would turn cold when she answered Richard's phone and heard my voice. But I'd dealt with difficult family dynamics at the hospital for decades. I knew patience. I knew how to be kind even when kindness wasn't returned. What I didn't know was what Melissa had been doing in the months leading up to that Thanksgiving. It started in March of 2024. Richard began mentioning small things going missing. "Have you seen my mother's sapphire earrings?" he'd ask, searching through the jewelry box we kept in our bedroom safe. I wanted to give them to Melissa for her birthday. We searched everywhere. I helped him look through drawers, closets, even the attic. Nothing. Then it was a gold bracelet. Then a pearl necklace. Each piece had belonged to Margaret, cherished items Richard had kept for Melissa's inheritance. Each disappearance left Richard more distressed, more confused. He started questioning his memory, wondering if he'd already given them away and forgotten. I watched the man I loved doubt himself, and something inside me began to shift. By November, 8 pieces had vanished. Richard estimated their total value at around $25,000, not a fortune, but significant. More than that, they were irreplaceable. Margaret's mother had given her the sapphire earrings on her wedding day. The pearl necklace had been in their family for 3 generations. Melissa suggested we file a police report. She sat in our living room, perfectly coiffed, perfectly concerned, suggesting maybe we needed to be more careful about who has access to the house. Her eyes flickered to me when she said it. Richard didn't notice, but I did. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. The way nurses do when a patient's vitals don't match their symptoms. I noticed that each piece went missing after one of Melissa's visits. I noticed that she always made sure to stop by when Richard was in the shower or out grabbing mail, giving her a few minutes alone. I noticed that she'd started asking Richard about his will, about his estate planning, about making sure Mom's things stay in the family. But I had no proof, just a cold suspicion growing in my gut, the same instinct that had saved more than one patient when I trusted it over the charts. Then came Thanksgiving. Melissa arrived at 2 in the afternoon with her husband Brad, a quiet accountant who barely made eye contact. My son Kevin was already there with his wife Sarah and their 2 kids, aged 7 and 9. The children were playing in the backyard, their laughter drifting through the windows while I basted the turkey for the 4th time. "Can I help with anything, Patricia?" Sarah offered, genuinely kind as always. "No, sweetheart. You relax. Everything's almost ready." Melissa walked into the kitchen then, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor I'd had refinished in the spring. She surveyed the counters laden with food, candied yams, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, homemade rolls. "You've been busy," she said. It should have sounded like a compliment. It didn't. "Well, it's Thanksgiving," I replied, keeping my voice light. "Family time." She smiled that smile again. "Yes, family." The way she said it made it clear I wasn't included in that definition. Dinner started well enough. Richard carved the turkey with the electric knife, making jokes about his surgical skills. Kevin told stories about his kids' school plays. The children chatted about their Lego creations. For a moment, it felt like what I'd hoped for, a real family gathering, messy and warm and imperfect but ours. Then Melissa set down her fork. "Dad," she said, her voice carrying over the conversation. Everyone went quiet. "Brad and I were talking, and we think it's really important that you update your will." Richard looked surprised. "Melissa, this isn't really the time." "No, I think it is the time." She glanced around the table, playing to the audience. "Especially with all of Mom's jewelry going missing. We need to make sure everything's protected, that Mom's legacy stays with her actual family." The word actual hung in the air like a blade. I felt Kevin tense beside me. Sarah reached under the table to squeeze my hand. Richard's face had gone red. "Melissa, that's enough," he said firmly. "Is it?" She turned to me then, her blue eyes ice cold. "No offense, Patricia, but you've been in Dad's life for, 4 years? My mother was with him for 41 years. She built a life with him. She raised me with him. She was there through everything. I'm not trying to replace your mother," I said quietly, my nurse voice, the one I used to calm agitated patients. "Aren't you?" Melissa's voice rose. "You moved into the house Dad bought. You're wearing jewelry my mother should be wearing. You're playing house with my father's money." "Our house," Richard corrected sharply. "Patricia and I bought this house together." "Did she?" Melissa's smile was vicious now. "Because, from what I understand, most of the down payment came from you, Dad, but somehow both your names are on the deed." "That wasn't true." Richard started to correct her, but I'd had enough. I'd spent 42 years being patient with people who were scared, angry, grieving. I'd absorbed their fear and their pain because that was my job. But this wasn't my job anymore. This was my home, my marriage, my life. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I contributed $180,000 of the $300,000 down payment. Richard contributed $120,000. We went to the bank together. We signed the papers together. Your father can show you the documents if you'd like to verify the numbers." Melissa's face flickered just for a second, surprise breaking through her composure. "But that's beside the point," I continued. I set down my own fork, meeting her eyes directly. "Your father and I are partners. In this house, in our lives, in everything. I loved my first husband deeply, and I love your father just as deeply. I'm not trying to erase your mother's memory. I'm trying to build a life with the man I married." "You're a nurse," Melissa said, and the way she said it made it sound like an accusation. "You found a comfortable retirement plan. That's what this is." The table had gone completely silent. Even the children had stopped chattering. sensing the adult tension. "I was a nurse," I said. "I saved lives for 4 decades. I held people's hands when they died. I made a difference. And yes, I also saved my money carefully so that I could retire with dignity. I didn't need your father's money, Melissa. I had my own." "Sure," she laughed, but it was brittle. "That's what they all say." "Melissa!" Richard's voice cracked like thunder. But I wasn't done. The words I'd been swallowing for months were rising up, and I couldn't stop them anymore. "You know what I think?" I said softly, leaning forward. "I think you're not angry that I married your father. I think you're angry that he's happy, that he found someone to love after your mother died, that he's not sitting alone in a house full of memories, waiting to die so you can inherit." Melissa's face went white, then red. "How dare you?" "And I think," I continued, my voice dropping even lower, "that you're the one who's been stealing your mother's jewelry." The silence that followed was absolute. Richard's mouth fell open. Kevin's eyes went wide. Brad looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. Sarah's grip on my hand tightened. Melissa stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "That's insane. You're insane." "Am I?" I stood too, calmer than I'd felt in months. "Because I noticed that every piece went missing after you visited. I noticed that you always made sure to have a few minutes alone in our bedroom. And I noticed that 3 weeks ago, when I was at the jeweler getting my watch repaired, there was a sapphire earring in the display case that looked remarkably like the ones your father has been searching for." I pulled out my phone, opened my photos, and slid it across the table to Richard. I'd taken a picture of that earring, close up, clear enough to see the distinctive setting. Richard's hands shook as he looked at it. "This is Margaret's earring. I'd know it anywhere." "The jeweler said someone brought it in for consignment in April," I said. "He wouldn't give me the name, but he said they had more pieces they were planning to bring in. Said it was a young blonde woman who needed the money for business expenses." Melissa's face had gone from red to ashen. "You're lying. We can call the jeweler right now," I said. "We can go there tomorrow. I'm sure he keeps records. I'm sure he'd remember you, especially since you probably mentioned you're a real estate agent. He specializes in estate sales. I bet you two had a nice conversation." Melissa looked at her father, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Dad, she's making this up. She's trying to turn you against me." "Why would I make it up?" I asked. "What would I gain?" "The house. The will. You want to make sure I don't get anything so you can keep it all." "I don't want your inheritance, Melissa," I said, and I meant it. "I have my own pension, my own savings, my own life. What I want is to live in peace with your father. What I want is for him to stop questioning his memory and blaming himself for losing things that you stole from him. What I want is for you to stop treating me like I'm a con artist when you're the one who's been stealing from your own father." Richard was staring at his daughter with an expression I'd seen before on family members when they realized their loved one wasn't going to get better. Grief mixed with recognition, truth that hurt too much to deny. "Melissa," he said quietly, "tell me the truth. Did you take your mother's jewelry?" "Dad." "The truth." She looked around the table, trapped. Brad was staring at his plate. Kevin was staring at her with undisguised contempt. Sarah had her hand over her mouth. The children had been ushered outside by Kevin's quick thinking, but the damage was done. "I needed the money," Melissa finally said, her voice small. "The Mercedes lease, the house we're renting, Brad's business loan that fell through. We were drowning, Dad. And you had all of Mom's jewelry just sitting there, not even wearing it, not even looking at it. I thought I could borrow a few pieces, sell them, pay you back later when things got better." "Those pieces were your inheritance," Richard said, and his voice broke. "Your mother wanted you to have them, not sell them, not turn them into car payments. I was going to buy them back." "With what money?" Richard's voice was rising now. "You just said you're drowning in debt. How were you going to buy back $25,000 worth of jewelry? How were you going to explain where the money came from?" Melissa's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dad. I made a mistake. I was desperate. And you blamed Patricia, Richard said. You made her feel unwelcome in her own home. You questioned her integrity, her motives, everything about her to cover up what you were doing. I thought if you divorced her, you'd have more money available. You wouldn't have to split everything. You could help me. Help you? Richard stood up, and I'd never seen him so angry. I've helped you your whole life, Melissa. I paid for your college. I helped with your wedding. I co-signed your first house. I gave you a job at my firm before you got your real estate license, and you repaid me by stealing from me and vilifying the woman I love? Melissa was crying now, mascara running down her face. Dad, please. I'll fix it. I'll get the jewelry back. I'll make this right. How? Richard's voice was ice. How will you make this right? Half of it is probably already sold, gone forever. Your mother's things, Melissa, the things she wanted you to have, to remember her by. I almost felt sorry for her then. Almost. But I remembered every Sunday phone call I wasn't included in. Every holiday where I felt like an intruder. Every subtle dig about nurses and money and replacement wives. The sympathy dried up. I think you and Brad should leave, Richard said quietly. Dad. Now. They left. Brad grabbed their coats without a word, and Melissa stumbled out crying, still trying to explain, to apologize, to undo what couldn't be undone. The door closed behind them, and the house felt suddenly cavernous and quiet. Kevin was the first to speak. Mom, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. I shook my head. I'm not your mother, sweetheart. But thank you. You're the closest thing my kids have to a grandmother on my dad's side, he said firmly, and you've been nothing but kind to all of us. What she said was cruel. Richard was still standing, staring at the door Melissa had left through. I went to him, put my hand on his arm. Are you okay? I asked softly. He turned to me, and his eyes were wet. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not seeing what she was doing. For not defending you better. For... Stop, I said gently. You didn't know. And you did defend me. You believed me when I showed you the evidence. I should have believed you before that. I should have seen how she was treating you. You loved your daughter. That's not a crime. That's being a good father. He pulled me into a hug then, and I felt him shake with silent tears, for his daughter's betrayal, for his wife's stolen jewelry, for the family dinner that had imploded, for everything that could have been different. We salvaged what we could of Thanksgiving. Kevin and Sarah stayed, and we ate pie in the living room while the kids watched a movie. We talked about lighter things, school concerts, vacation plans, anything but what had just happened. But the air felt different, clearer, somehow. Like a storm had finally broken and the pressure had lifted. That night, after everyone left and the dishes were done, Richard and I sat on our back porch. It was cold, and we'd wrapped ourselves in blankets, looking up at the November stars. I need to talk to my attorney about the will, Richard said quietly. Okay. And I need to decide what to do about Melissa, about pressing charges, or trying to get the jewelry back, or... He trailed off. That's your decision, I said. She's your daughter. I won't tell you what to do. What would you do? I thought about that. Thought about all the families I'd seen at the hospital, torn apart by grief or money or old resentments. Thought about healing, and what that really meant. I'd be honest with her, I said finally. I'd tell her that what she did was theft, and it hurt you, and you can't just pretend it didn't happen. But I'd also tell her that you love her, and if she's willing to do the work, real work, not just apologies, there might be a path forward. Counseling, accountability, rebuilding trust, one step at a time. And if she's not willing, then you'll know you tried, and you can move forward without wondering what if. He was quiet for a long time. I don't know if she'll be willing. She's always been proud, always needed to be right. Then that's her choice to make, I said. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. I learned that as a nurse. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. 2 weeks later, Richard met with Melissa and her husband at a lawyer's office. I didn't go, he asked me to, but I declined. This was between them. He came home that evening looking exhausted, but lighter somehow. "She's going to try to buy back as many pieces as she can," he told me. "Brad is taking a second job. They're selling the Mercedes. They're getting financial counseling. And she wrote you a letter." He handed me an envelope. Inside was 2 pages of handwriting, messy and tear-stained. The letter started with "Dear Patricia" and ended with "I'm sorry." In between was everything Melissa had never said about her fear that I was replacing her mother, about her resentment that her father seemed happy without Margaret, about her shame at her financial failures, and her desperation to seem successful. She didn't excuse what she'd done, she just explained it, and she asked, not for forgiveness, but for a chance to do better. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. "Are you going to respond?" Richard asked. "Eventually," I said, "but not yet. She needs to sit with what she did for a while, and I need to decide if I'm ready to open that door." "That's fair. I'm not trying to punish her, Richard, I just need time." "I know. So does she." Christmas came and went. Melissa and Brad didn't join us, but they sent cards, small ones, awkward, but sincere. Kevin and his family came, and we decorated gingerbread houses and sang carols and pretended everything was normal. And slowly, bit by bit, it started to feel normal again. In January, I started volunteering at a free clinic 2 days a week. I'd missed nursing more than I'd admitted to myself, missed the feeling of being useful, of making a tangible difference. The clinic served uninsured patients, immigrants, homeless individuals, people who fell through the cracks. I came home tired and fulfilled, the way I used to after a good shift at Mercy General. Richard noticed. "You're glowing," he said one evening, watching me make dinner. "I am? You look happy. Really happy. Not just content, but lit up from the inside." I thought about that. He was right. I was happy. Despite everything with Melissa, despite the drama and the heartache, I was genuinely happy. "I think I'm finally living for myself," I said, not trying to prove anything to anyone, not trying to earn anyone's approval, just living. He came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. "I love you, Patricia Thompson Andrews." "I love you too." In March, 5 months after Thanksgiving, Melissa called, not Richard, me. My phone rang, and her name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello? Patricia." Her voice was small. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but could we meet for coffee? Just the 2 of us?" I could have said no. Part of me wanted to. But I thought about what I'd told Richard on that cold November night. Sometimes healing means doing the work. "Okay," I said. "Saturday at 10. The Starbucks on Midlothian." We met. She looked different, thinner, tired, less polished. The Mercedes was gone, replaced by a Toyota Camry. She ordered a regular coffee, not the expensive latte I remembered her always getting. We sat across from each other in silence for a moment, then she spoke. "I got back 4 of the pieces," she said. "The sapphire earrings, 2 bracelets, and the pearl necklace. The rest were already sold to private buyers. Dad has them now." "That's good. Brad and I are doing better. Financially, I mean. He got a promotion. We moved to a smaller apartment. We're making it work. I'm glad." More silence. Then, "I'm in therapy. For everything. My relationship with money, with Dad, with my grief over my mom. I'm learning that I never really processed her death. I just buried it and tried to keep moving." I nodded. I'd seen that before, countless times. Unprocessed grief turning into anger, into poor choices, into hurt spread to everyone around it. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Melissa said, looking directly at me for the first time. "I know what I did was unforgivable. I stole from my own father. I made your life miserable. I tried to break up your marriage. I was cruel and petty and wrong. You were scared," I said quietly, "and hurting. That doesn't excuse it, but I understand it. I thought if Dad was alone, he'd need me more, that I'd still be essential to his life. I didn't understand that parents can love their children and still have room for other people. I wanted to be enough for him, and when I wasn't, I blamed you instead of accepting it. Her honesty surprised me. This wasn't the polished, defensive Melissa from Thanksgiving. This was someone who'd looked in the mirror and not liked what she saw. Your father loves you, I said. That hasn't changed, but he also loves me. Both things can be true. I'm starting to understand that. She took a breath. My therapist says I should work on accepting that you're part of his life now. That fighting it only hurts everyone, including me. She says I should try to see you as a person, not as a threat. What do you see? She thought about that. I see someone who makes my dad happy, who takes care of him, who stood up for herself when I attacked her instead of just taking it. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Being a nurse teaches you strength, I said, and boundaries. I learned when to be gentle and when to stand firm. That Thanksgiving, I needed to stand firm. I'm glad you did. Because I needed to hear it. I needed to face what I'd done. She paused. I'm not asking to be friends, Patricia. I don't know if we'll ever be close. But I'd like to try to be civil, for Dad's sake. Maybe someday for more than that, but I can't promise anything right now. Civil is a good start, I said. We finished our coffee. We talked about small things, her real estate work, my volunteering at the clinic. It was awkward and careful, but it was honest. When we said goodbye, she hugged me briefly, and I hugged her back. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me a chance. Thank you for asking for one. That evening, I told Richard about the coffee meeting. He cried again, but this time from relief, from hope. Do you think she means it? He asked. I think she's trying, I said. That's all any of us can do. April brought warm weather and cherry blossoms. Richard and I planted a garden in the backyard, tomatoes, peppers, herbs. We worked side by side in the dirt, talking about nothing and everything. Melissa came to Sunday dinner once a month. It was still awkward, still careful, but it was something. My son Kevin pulled me aside one Sunday after Melissa left. I'm proud of you, Mom, he said. For what? For not letting her destroy your happiness, for standing up for yourself, for giving her a second chance even though she didn't deserve it. You taught me something about strength and grace that day at Thanksgiving. I hugged him tight. I love you. Love you too. On our 5-year wedding anniversary in September, Richard took me back to Virginia Beach, to the same spot where he'd proposed. We walked along the shore at sunset, the waves rolling in softly. I was thinking about what Melissa said, Richard said, about you finding a comfortable retirement plan. Richard, let me finish. She was wrong about so many things, but she was right about one. You did find something when you met me. You found a partner, someone to share your life with. And I found the same thing. We both got lucky, Patricia. Not because of money or houses or any of that, but because we found each other when we were both ready to try again. I stopped walking, turned to face him. The sun was setting behind him, turning the sky orange and pink. I spent so many years taking care of other people, I said. As a wife, as a mother, as a nurse, always putting myself last, always making sure everyone else was okay. And then Tom died, and I realized I'd lost myself somewhere along the way. I didn't even know who I was anymore without someone to take care of. And now? Now I know. I'm Patricia. I'm 68 years old. I love volunteering at the clinic. I love our garden. I love you. And I finally understand that taking care of myself isn't selfish. It's necessary. He kissed me as the waves crashed around our feet. That night, back in our hotel room, I wrote a letter. Not to Melissa, to myself. I wrote about everything I'd learned in the past year. About standing up for myself. About boundaries and self-respect. About the difference between sacrifice and martyrdom. About how love doesn't mean erasing yourself for someone else. I sealed it and put it in my suitcase. Someday, maybe I'd give it to one of my grandchildren, Kevin's daughter, when she was old enough to understand. Or maybe I'd keep it for myself, a reminder of the year I finally chose me. Because that's what I learned from Melissa's insult. Not that I was less than her mother, not that I was a gold digger or a replacement or any of the things she accused me of being. I learned that I was Patricia, just Patricia, and that was enough. More than enough. I was 70 when I boarded that first trip to Italy, with Richard the following spring. 70 when I finally stopped apologizing for taking up space in my own life. 70 when I realized that growing old doesn't mean growing small. The silverware still gleams under our chandelier. But now when I polish it, I'm not preparing for battle. I'm simply taking care of what's mine, and that makes all the difference.